We definitely are in an age of return of the gamebook form after the dark years of the 1990s and early 2000s. More gamebooks are being published than they used to, and now we have a lot of gamebooks that have been designed and written for adults specifically. There is an irony, though, that is, the gamebook form was invented in the US and in the UK, and yet today English language gamebooks tend to be self-published. Doesn't look like there's a lot of interest in publishing them professionally. Now things are slowly changing, but still a lot of English language books are self-produced, which you can do thanks to modern means of communication, but it also means that the gamut can be, the range of quality can be very vast. From people who just write excellent books and decided to self-publish them, to people who don't know much about writing at all, spelling, grammar. There is just no standard that you can rely, so you never know. Gamebooks by English writing authors are completely unpredictable. The irony is that that's not the case everywhere. In Italy and in France, for example, you have publishers who invest in professional publications of gamebooks. Matter of fact, you have some books that have been self-published in English that received their first professional edition when they're translated into Italian or English. Point is, I hope that you're enjoying my reviews of English language gamebooks, because I think they can be useful, because again, it's so hard to decide when you really don't know what's going to be in each Pandora's box. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the Entrum Epic, which is a trilogy of books by Samuel Isaacson. He's from London, or at least he lives in London, in the bio at the end of the book. These books are increasing length, 300 paragraphs, 400 and 500 paragraphs. It's science fiction, and I'm going to tell you very, very little about the stories because I don't want to spoil it to you. But let me just say that you're an astronaut, it's science fiction, you're an astronaut in the future, and you're going on a mission on the Altimer, that is the name of your ship, and well, since it's fiction and you know there's an element of adventure, you probably know very little goes the way you expected and things start happening that are going to be challenging and difficult. Should you survive what happens there, you will have an adventure in New Gaia, which is the Mars colony, and so you're going to have an element of urban exploration there on this Martian colony, and you will travel to different places. Should you survive, the story will advance into what appears to be maybe a war? I don't know. What do I know? Well, I do, but you know my point. So you can see that from basically what might be, who knows, a survival story to what might be, who knows, a war story, there's going to be an increase in scope of the adventure. But again, the style, the genre is definitely intrigue and adventure with element of survival, because yes, you may die. There is a game system. So it's not purely narrative like we had in, the Choose Your Own Adventure kind of books. You will roll dice to create your character, and the character will have three main attributes: body, mind, and heart. And then we also have spirit, which is very important because when it goes down to zero, you're dead, or in any case you have lost enough motivation that you're not be able to continue the story, so you're dead. So you lose your game, you lose the game when the spirit score goes down to zero. I don't know, I wish they called body was, the one indicating life points, but it's not a big deal. Also, you roll dice, which is not my favorite way of creating a character. However, there are things that I like very much about the game system. One is when you're taking tests. There are so many game books in which you're told, roll the dice, say, against your mind or your heart or your body, and you pass if you roll equal to or lower than. I guess it's easier for the game designer, it just has to write test mind, that's it. But then to be successful, you roll low, which always seems like a bummer to me. Anticlimactic, it feels like not as exciting. I want to be excited when I roll high. And game book designers that want you to roll high when you test, they go to the extra step of determining the threshold of difficulty of the test. And so that's what happens here. So I like a game book such as this one, a game system such as this one. Well, you pass tests by rolling high. So when the text tells you to check against a certain skill, the text provides a difficulty level, say test body for 10. Then you will roll dice, add the relevant score, and if you have reached the threshold or higher, you pass. That's how it's done. I love it. And sometimes you will have difficult tests in which you need to combine the two traits together. And again, then the threshold level will be pretty higher. Combat. You're going to have code words. Super important to keep the continuity straight. Combat is particularly brutal, which influences gameplay, of course, because you're not just go cavalierly fight, picking up fights. You're probably gonna try to avoid them, unless you're playing, of course, story mode, which means you're ignoring the rules. It's a game book. It's analog. You don't need coding abilities to change the difficulty level. That's one thing that is fascinating about game books. Back to the point, if you're playing by the rules, combat is you roll 2 dice, add your body score, reduce the number by their score, and whatever is left is how much damage you cause to their spirit. And again, I wish body was called, fighting ability, and spirit was called life points, because that's what they mean to me, but it works anyways. So, if they're still alive, then they roll dice against you, they add their body score, you subtract your body from the result, and whatever is left is the amount of damage that you take. This adding and subtracting seems complicated, but of course you would do once at the beginning of combat. Say if you have a 4 and they have a 2, then when you're attacking, you're at +2, and when they're attacking, they're at -2, and so that stays stable. But as you can see, it can be pretty brutal and swingy, because if you roll a 2 and they roll a 12, well, pretty much it's tough. It's tough. People can be taken down with a single good hit, as of course it happens in real life. Nice touch of realism, but again, in terms of gameplay, sometimes that can feel anticlimactic. But I think that, well, the designer and the writer didn't just had the combat system in mind and then didn't care about what to do with it, then design like a fighting fantasy. That would be terrible. But yeah, usually there are ways of going around things. There are alternatives, not always, but there are alternatives to how you can deal with hostile presences. And also, however, sometimes fights happen, but when they do, it's significant. When they do, it is meaningful. I like the game system. Again, it has one of my favorite things, which is roll high. You roll your character, not my favorite thing, but it's fine. It's very common in game books. And the combat being so brutal and swingy, it's okay in the general idea, because again, that element has been surrounded by narrative options that make combat meaningful and pretty scary. The stories are interconnected, again, and they make sense. You should really read them in order, although the author says, oh, you can pick up any book. Yeah, any book, you can pick up any book if you don't care too much about the things. But as they build up, and if you start from this one, you're going to have so many spoilers about the previous ones that just, and also pick up the first, see if you like it. That kind of like space survival, intrigue kind of adventure, and see if you want to get more epic. The fact that they physically become longer and therefore more complex also contributes to create the sense of increase of tension and interest. The stories there is an element of puzzle/textual maze, so I got to a point where I was stuck, and I thought, that must have been a typo. There was no way of proceeding until I go back and I discover the right code words. There are a couple of secret passages, like in fighting fantasy games, by which I mean, in a certain place you will, I'm giving you a fictional example so there is no spoiler. Maybe the text says, oh, when you see the staircase, a passage mentions the staircase at 20, and so you find a secret passage under the staircase. If you read fighting fantasy, you know where that comes from, but doesn't come from these guys. And so yeah, there was a time where I was just like going around a certain area and I thought that there was no way until I go back enough, find the way of the secret passage. So you're gonna have some of those, which for some can be frustrating, but I think they added a nice challenge, and I personally don't mind them. Again, these are new, so say fighting fantasy books, now you have full walkthroughs, so you never really get stuck. When you find those things, you can find an online walkthrough. These guys, well, they're new. I haven't seen any full walkthrough online yet, so you're gonna have to work for that. The Ultimer, New Gaia, and the Solar War. Now you're thinking, why is it called the Entrum Epic? It's the Entram. What the heck is an Entram? It's not in the title anywhere, but that's how the author calls it. And so we're gonna call it that way. That's why I decided to title this video review about the Entrum Epic. This is the name of the series. What the heck is an Entram? You'll discover if you decide to read them as you read them. But again, I should also mention, I started by talking about the fact that you never know what you get with a modern self-published book. These are well-written, well-designed, and yes, when it comes to well-written, you can't even take for granted these days that the grammar and the spelling will make sense. These have been designed with the kind of professional quality, editorially speaking, that you can expect from a professional publisher. If I had been told this was from a professional publisher, I wouldn't have been surprised. I'm not giving you spoilers, but at least want to show you some of the art, because again, these days with self-produced art, people just don't have any sometimes, or they get it from free online sources, and it just looks sad, depressing, and also discontinuous. Here the art has a consistent style. I'm taking the book out of the image so I can show you just the images and not the text if I can. So the art is consistent and nice. And again, professionally speaking, these books are much more editorial accomplished than a lot of other self-published game books that you see out there these days. In other words, I like them. I like the story. They're written well. They're designed well. I like the game system. Pretty much it. I like everything about them.